what characteristic has been revealed in you from elite sailing?
Well, I mean, I really think that the thing that I learned through sailing the most, I guess it was the desire to win was the thing. And then that became the desire for success. And then that parlayed into my other career after I got off the water. So it was really I would say it all boils down to drive based on the need to succeed.
So if you're seeing yourself as driven, and you were driven from sailing into what you do now, how do you manage that into not becoming obsessive, taking over your life, or...
Oh no, it did. What are you talking about?
but it not, everyone leads into burnout, and there's a big conversation now in the world around mental health and burnout. And I actually think we're going the other way. I actually would say, I've never seen, and again, we're in New York right now, but in the UK, I've not seen levels of drive be as low. And I think there's a difference, actually. There's a difference between I want to be driven, I'm motivated, I want to do this thing, and then the drive to do the thing. I think that's never been lower. That, for me, is where there's a slight difference.
Interesting. I found, I basically... I never saw it I saw it as a success thing. Like if I wasn't successful, I had to drive because I had no choice. I had to pay the rent. And then when I was successful, I was like, well, what if it ends? Or if I had a bad month, or if I didn't, it was like, there was never anything doubting me about where the drive was always there. I'm trying to think of periods of lapse with drive. I think comfort zoning is a drive killer. I think when you get into a comfort zone, you feel like you're just going around in circles and you're doing fine. I mean, when business for me is fine and everything's okay, and, my life seems to be going along just fine, there's less drive to change, to do anything else. So I don't really push myself as hard. I just kind of stuck in the routine, walking over to the studio, taking pictures of somebody, going home, hanging out with the kids, sailing on weekends, whatever. And then when you realize that, life is about change, everything's going to change, and things change, and then you go, oh, wait a minute, that's not the same. And you have no choice but to figure it out. I mean, everybody got thrown, a curveball with the pandemic, and we were all having to figure stuff out. So it was really interesting to see what that did.
How do you... I've been talking about this too. I've been in therapy since October, and I've been talking to my therapist about this idea of the same thing. When you have success, how do you not let it lapse into complacency? And that comfort zone's right. So, and that comfort zone looks different for everyone.
Yeah.
But have you found, or do you know, or have you experienced whether it becomes a complacency?
Yeah, I don't have that gene. Like, it's not in me. I don't know why. I mean, I've been like, I can't be complacent on anything. I've never been that way since I can recall. I mean, in my whole life, as long as I like it, I'll get complacent about anything that I'm not into. But it's also, I've gone through periods where I didn't really have a fire under my butt for whatever it is that I was going for next. And that causes the complacency. If you don't know where you're going and you don't have the goal and you're not, set up to make it happen, you can get complacent real easily. But if you had success in one area, you can let it kind of wane, and you kind of, I don't know if you're relishing in the success, but you're just like milking the success, and you can only milk the success for so long. And then what happens is, you get, all of a sudden things start to change, and it might go away a little bit, might not go away, for the long run, but you've got to make a step in another direction. Otherwise you're going to get complacent, I guess. Yeah. What it is.
I actually brought it forward to him as a fear, for it wasn't something I had actually experienced. I'm just worried that I would get complacent, or I would, because I've seen in the world we live in now that everything is so much easier. So the access to things is so easy, and the motivation, the drive of some other people to get going isn't there. So I was like, could it have an effect? Could it start to leak into your life without you knowing it? And that was my fear. It was my fear of, well, could this complacency just turn up on my doorstep without me knowing? And then suddenly I'm like, holy shit, I'm not doing the things I used to be doing because I've just almost lapsed into some form of comfort. So for me, I have to do things that force me out of that to keep me motivated. So this year, for example, I've set 12 challenges. So I set 12 challenges, one each month. And it's a different random challenge. So what did I do? Last month, I did lunges for a mile, right? And then I did one day, January or February, I just ran a marathon. Just woke up on a Sunday, ran a marathon. And just did random things. So it was the idea that every month I have to just challenge myself because I didn't want to lapse into some form of complacency and find a way to just stay motivated, driven towards something else outside of my work for sure, because I feel like I can stay motivated with that. I can wake up and be motivated. But it was for me, that was an actual like practical thing that I brought into my life. That was as a mitigator of complacency and laziness, because I know it's coming in the world, right? It's people struggle to get going.
I mean, that's amazing that you do that. Like that'll, I mean, well, you have to have the discipline to follow through. With most people saying, hey, I'm going to go up, run a marathon this month. People are like, you're out of your freaking marbles, but you obviously can do it.
Yeah, I think if you have the capabilities to do it, you could walk a marathon, do whatever you want. But for me, it was having a set goal to go towards it. And yeah, I found that as something for me just stops the lack of drive. Because I think if you get stuck in the same thing over and over again, I was just worried about it. So I'm very, just very cautious about that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I think that once you compete, and you have at the highest level of sport, you see the differences in the individuals. Everybody says, anybody can be pretty good, but the difference between the good and the great ones is it's like tiny, but it's huge. It's like they're not doing anything that miraculous, but it's like a huge difference when you get to the top. So I think seeing that, for me, I wasn't ever that great at sail. I was a sailor and I was okay. But when I started training, it was just that the boat I sailed became an Olympic class. So everybody in the US was like, hey, let's go sailing. Let's go train for the Olympics. And then, and there was a pecking order, and then to get through it. And then I was sailing against all the guys. I started to qualify for world championships, went to world championships, and seeing the best in the world, I think gives you a sense of like there's an energy about it. There's a, I guess it's an ingrained belief in those individuals. Like you just couldn't get around it. You just knew going to the regatta. I was like, I'm not going to beat that guy. Guy's just like on a different playing field, and you know it. And I think that whatever that is, some people have it, some people don't, or maybe they have it, but they don't know how to. It's like in a treasure chest somewhere in their brain, and they haven't opened it, because some people open it, and then all of a sudden you're like, where was that? But I think there's too many people that are what's the word I'm looking for? It's like they're just not go-getters. Like they're okay to sit on the couch. I was sitting on the couch, like I finished my Olympic trials in February, and I was just like kind of down because I didn't do that well. I'm older. I just did it for fun. I qualified, so I was like, I'll go sail against the good guys. But I had a knee issue, and I went into it kind of half-assed. And afterwards, I was like, I quit. I'm going to quit for a while. I'm going to take a break. I don't even want to go. And then my coach he's from Australia, and he's like, hey, I want to come do a clinic at your home in New Jersey. And I was like, he's like, why don't you get some guys together? Let's do it. And I was like, I don't even feel like doing it. I was in this rut, but I was also in those times for me are the moments for reflection, and for it's like I started to miss it, and then I wanted to do it, and then he forced me to do it, and then I got out there and I was like, oh, I really do love this. So I think you need to have a balance. I think it's okay to I call it backpedaling. Sometimes you just like, I just got to take a break. I just got to I got to sit on my butt. I got to be a couch potato, and then it invigorates you again to go forward again, with the notion that, you know, I'm not a couch potato. I'm just doing this to allow myself to let this marinate for a little while. So I miss it. So I, you know, do that. So this backpedaling stuff I've been doing forever. But the problem is I ended up having a trainer come in here. This guy, Don Saladino, he's amazing. And he, I asked him, he was doing a podcast in here, and I asked him, I said, I'm all or nothing. Like, I'm like either all in or all out. Like, I will turn a switch off and I will be a mess, like diet, exercise, sailing, like whatever the athletic side of me is like all off. Like, I'll still take pictures and I don't look at it the same. I think fitness and health and you know, nutrition, turn it off, like everything. And then when I decide to turn it on, that's when I know the discipline kicks in, and I go, and everything, it's like a switch. I'm like, no, I'm not picking that. It could be sitting in front of me. I'm not going to pick up that brownie or that chocolate chip cookie, but I'll eat 10 of them yesterday. Right. But I flicked the switch this morning. I'm not eating that, you know.
So you haven't found a happy medium?
I can't. Some people do, and people see me. They know I'm like that. They're like, why don't you just change a little bit? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm an all or nothing guy. I'm trying to figure out how to make that work. I don't know. But I make it work because I turn it on and off. I don't know if it's good for me. I don't know. That's a good question. I really don't know what the answer is.
Wonder if it's whether a high standard that you've set and you're like, if I don't reach that high standard, it's not the thing I want to do. And we were just sort of briefly talking around perfectionism, and athletes are more often than not a perfectionist, because the reason being is that perfectionism is this beautiful double-edged sword. It's a paradox, and having the positives of perfectionism are you're driven, you're creative, you're motivated, you have high standards, some high expectations of yourself. But then the maladaptive behaviors on it, the concerns from it are you fear mistake, you have concerns over mistakes, you doubt yourself. Sometimes you even procrastinate because you won't make the next move unless it's absolutely perfect. It's like the right one. Yeah. So people usually need to have everything organized. And the reason I'm so interested in perfectionism, and it's in my research, is because I'm a recovering perfectionist. So it is purely of like interest, but it is really common that it's if I can't do it at that level, then why do it at all?
That's what I'm up against with my friends. So all my friends who trained for the Olympics when I was training, which I trained for 1996 for Atlanta and for 2000 in Sydney. And after that, I quit and picked up a camera, and my life went this route. But in the boat I sail, you become a master at age, I think it's 35. And then at 40, every 10 years, now they changed it. Anyway, when I started at age 35, I became a master. So I quit the Olympics at age 30. So from 30 to 39, I just barely sailed. But when I was 39, the World Championship was in Nova Scotia, and I was like, I'll go. Why don't I go or something? And I think it was then. Yeah, it was 2009, I think. And I went, and I was like, I kind of enjoyed it, but then I didn't do it again. And I was like, and at 45, you get into this other class, and I was 230 pounds. I was out of shape. I was fat. I was like my fighting weight was 185. I'm 230. I'm taking pictures and just like I wasn't working out or anything. And I was like, you know what? I want to race in the World Championship, and I want to see how well I can do. And I want to be 185 for the regatta. And the regatta started on July 12th, and it was January 1st. So I was 230 on January 1st, and I got to 185 on July 12th, and I finished second in the world. Wow. So it was awesome.
Yeah, wow. That was a quick turnaround.
It was awesome. But the thing, I mean, but the thing is that it was like, I wanted to do it so bad. And then I got hooked. So now I go to the World Championships like every year. I didn't go this year, but I go almost every year since. I think I've been to almost every one of them.
And you're now doing Olympic trials, you were saying?
Well, I qualified for the Olympic trials because I was sailing so much. So the Olympic trials for the Americans was in February, and I did it, and I got mid-fleet. So I wasn't really happy with that. But I was sailing against all ages. When I sail against my age group, I'm much better. I won the European Championship in 2022, and then in 2023 I got third. I've been second in the World Championship 3 times in my age group, so it's been fun. It now keeps me in shape, but I had my little break of going to the Olympic trials and getting my butt kicked around and having. Like, I'm okay getting beat, but it doesn't feel good. Some of my friends like won't get in the boat, like, because the perfectionism, they might have been great when we were, training for the Olympics, but they won't touch the boat because they know that it's going to be an uphill climb to get back to the level we're never going to attain the level that we were at. I'm never going to be as fast as when I was training for the Olympics. I just don't have the time. I'm a weekend warrior now, having fun with it.
What are some of the traits that you need to have for sailing? Is it more physical? What are some of the psychological traits you might have to have?
There's a physical component to it. So we get in these weird positions, and you got to be fit. And the weight of the boat that I sail is 130 pounds. So if
the boat is only 130
pounds. The boat weighs 130 pounds, the hull. So if you sit in it and you're 230 pounds, it doesn't go anywhere.
Right. Wow.
So the optimal weight is dependent upon the size of the sail in the boat. And the boat's small, and the sail's pretty small. But what I've found, if you look at the Olympians and like the guys that are training for the Olympics with Paris coming up, I mean, they're all around 185 to 190, something like that. I think that the weight's around there now. So I was always on the bigger side, but it's fine. I mean, it's fine now. But sailing's like, I like to say it's like playing chess and the board's moving all over the place. I mean, it's like you have to think, you have to be strategic, and you have to know what the weather's doing, and then, to get through the waves, how to get the boat to go fast through the waves, and your boat handling. There's so much mentally going on. You're making decisions I don't think you could be a quicker decision maker than in a sailboat. It's just too fast. Like, I'm so good. I mean, it helps me driving and navigating stuff. Like, I always am walking, like, my wife hates this because I walk ahead of her, but I'm walking through crowds and stuff. And with sailboat racing, you're like navigating, like, okay, what's this? This boat's coming this way. You got 12 boats coming into one little mark, and you got to get your way through there. So if I see like 30 people or people like going like this, I'm like always like, oh, I know how to get through this. It's like you have this skill set that's really interesting. So
yeah, wow, never thought of that. Never thought of like something transferring over. Have you, when you moved over to shooting, so you went through modeling, gone to shooting, was that a passion? Was there a switch of passion from sailing to shooting?
No, it was a need. I need to make money. I was like living in New York. I was modeling. I was acting. I was a bartender. And I was like, I didn't want to be in the bar anymore. And I was like, so a photographer that I had shot with a bunch said, why don't you pick up a camera? And I was like, I don't know. And I don't know why he did. Like, to this day, his name's Bruce Weber, and he's my mentor in photography for the most part. I'm self-taught, but I spent a lot of time around him and got to know, like, it was very interesting being around him and watching him work and seeing what he did. It was the top of the game. So he was the one who shot me for Ralph Lauren when I first started. Then he shot me for Abercrombie and Fitch, and then he told me to pick up a camera. So it's been an amazing journey.
I feel like just even being here in like 48 hours, there is such a different vibe to being in New York than I know it's New York. I just think America, and I don't want to just say the American dream, but the whole conversations, all the conversations I've had with people over here and telling them about what the enthusiasm that comes out of people is like visceral.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I think in the UK, I said it to you before we shot, I told you about tall poppy syndrome and this idea of if any poppy grows above the rest, we cut it down to size. It's a humbling experience. It's essentially, we don't want you getting above the rest, so you're back down here with the rest of us, sort of thing.
Wow.
In Australia, like friends of mine in Australia will call it clipping wings. So if you feel like you're going to fly off, it's like back down you come. And it's this cynicism and pessimism that exists within our society. But here, there is just this feeling like, okay, anything is really possible. If you want to do it, you got to have that drive, got to have the discipline, and that's respected. But if you want to go after it, it's kind of people are there pushing you up. They're enthusiastic for you. Like, fuck, that's awesome. And as I said, just 48 hours of just feeling that. It's like I'm leaving, going home, going, right, yeah, come on, let's go. Yeah. And I think that having that surrounding you, whether you're shifting environments, whether you're shifting a new passion, it has to just eke into, okay, I can do this, I'm going after it. But you talked about having a mentor there. You spoke about having a mentor before. I can't remember his name.
Bob Proctor.
Bob Proctor.
Yeah.
What sort of role did he play in your life? Because I know mindset is something that you really push to your clients, but to your base as well. So how does that play a role in your life?
I never had an idea. Bob would call me like an unconscious competent. Like, you're not aware of what you're doing. Like when I was sailing, I never set goals. I didn't know. I had a goal of a gold medal, I guess, in my brain, but I never wrote it down. I never paid attention to it. I just thought, I want to win a gold medal. I want to be on the United States sailing team. I want to go to a world championship. My first world championship that I went to, we had a sports psychologist named Jerry May, and he was the first one that introduced me to visualization. And I had never done, I had done it subconsciously before. Like, I had visualization when you're an athlete and you're doing your sport, like, it happens naturally. Like, you just, I remember being in the boat and going out and practicing by myself. There's nobody else around me. That all I'm going to do is visualize being in a race next to the world champion and like go do my best to try and compete. So I was already visualizing even though I didn't know it. I was already setting goals even though I didn't know it. But then a model friend of mine, he wasn't a friend of mine at the time. I met him. We met on a photo shoot, and he said to me, hey, I want you to come to this. You're an athlete, right? And he was into selling magnets or something for the body. He's like, I want you to come to this seminar. And it was a network marketing company. They were trying to motivate people to sell these magnetic products. But I got into the seminar, and Bob Proctor was there talking, and he started to talk about goal setting and success and all this different mindset stuff. And I was like, I've never heard this before. And I was hooked from that day. It changed my life. It's funny because that friend of mine, we picked up cameras at the same time, and we both have great photography businesses. So it was nice to go through that journey with this friend of mine. And but that moved on to me getting to know Bob a little bit better, and I started to apply his principles to my business. And then I forgot about him. I just kind of like got I was on track. I was utilizing goal setting and visualization and that kind of stuff, and to do what it is that I wanted to do, which my goal was to be the best headshot photographer in New York City. I was like, that was my BHAG, my big, hairy, audacious goal, I guess you would say. I was like, I want to be the best in New York City. So how do I get there? What am I going to have to do? And I guess the implementation was, well, I trained for the Olympics. This isn't going to be as hard as that, right? And there were like probably 300 other photographers in New York City that were taking headshots at the time. But what I didn't realize is that the drive and what I was doing was not going to elevate me to the top of New York City. It was going to elevate me to the top of the world in what I do. So it went from New York to, I was considered the best in New York for years. And I was like, all right, I want to open up in LA just to be the best in the US. I opened up in LA, and then this photography blog, the F Stoppers, came into my studio, and they were like, we want to interview you. And then that changed everything. That opened up the whole world. I had videos going viral. I was like, you know, getting asked to speak on stages for the first time ever. Decided to speak, decided to teach. And this all coincided with me getting reacquainted with Bob's material. So I took a break, and there was a recession in like 2007, 2008, and I took a hit on the income, and it's tough when you live in New York City with that stuff, because once you're used to a standard of living, and then you have to, you know, bob and weave and figure it out, it's not easy. But somehow through Facebook or something, I saw Bob's name pop up again, and I called the number, and his son answered the phone, and I was like, yeah, I used to study with Bob years ago, but I stopped, and he changed my life. Everything changed because of him. And then Bob got on. He's like, let me call you back. He calls me back, and Bob's on the phone. And so he gets me to do a year coaching program with him. And that changed everything. Again, it was, Bob does a program called the Paradigm Shift. So paradigm, comfort zone, whatever you're used to, habitual pattern. Breaking that pattern, I needed some help. And in order to do it, I wanted to go through that program, and it did help. And I've seen that happen over the course of my lifetime. And when I'm in a habitual state of affairs that's not changing, even though it's okay, everything's fine, it just, with that drive inside, there's something inside me that's not happy with that, and it doesn't sit well, so it can get ugly. So I'm glad that I did that. And then after that happened, I started to do some speaking stuff, and then Bob asked me. I had some good success, and he sent a video crew here to interview me, and then next thing I know, he's like, hey, come be on stage with me. And I started to do some stuff with him, and it was amazing. And I miss him because he's gone. But the one thing that he did for me that was the most dramatic thing in my life, and the reason why I would consider him a pivotal character, the most pivotal character, probably one of the most, is that I was living in New York City. I was 4 years out of after the 96 games. I had no plans it was 3 years. It was 3 years because the quad is 4. And I had no plans to go train for the Olympics again. And I was in a workshop of his, and he was doing this portion of decision making, and there were like 500 people in the room. And he goes, where's that sailor guy? And after we got together again later, he didn't remember any of this, but I was like, this was huge for me. I'm telling you the story. So he said, where's the sailor guy? And I was like, how does he know who I am? And I was like ready to get under the table. I was like this. And he's like, are you going to go for the Olympics? And I was like, I was like tongue tied. I was like, I wasn't even thinking about it. I was like, you can't go for the Olympics after taking a 3-year break. I was like a model in New York, bartending till 4 a.m. So he said, it was a 2-day course. He said, go home and think about it. Come back tomorrow. I went home. That night I didn't sleep. I was like, I did not sleep. I was like, this is crazy. I get back, and he goes, so what'd you decide? He said, are you going to go for the gold medal? I said, yeah. I stood up. He said, stand up. I said, I'm going to go for the gold medal. The room erupted. People started clapping and cheering. And Bob had on stage with him Milt Campbell. And Milt Campbell won the decathlon in 1956. And he was on stage, and he looks out in the crowd, and he goes, I'm going to coach you. And he did. And what I did with Milt made me understand like what it takes to be a champion. And like I was like, he was another level. But that got me back in the boat, which ended up turning into, I didn't pick up a camera till after that. So I ended up making a professional decision to pick the camera up, and then all the things kind of fell into place after that.
Going back to when you said you wanted to be the best in New York, if you had set that goal, being the best in the world straight away, do you think that would have changed things? Do you think shooting for, it's still a big goal obviously because it's New York City, but it is not saying straight off the bat, I'm going to be the best in the world. It's like, I'm going to do this bit first. really well. And I'm going to be the best there. And then it just...
I didn't think it would reach globally, but if you think about it, New York is pretty much the capital of the world. So if you're the best here, you know, if you can make it here,
it's a great place to start out, right?
But yeah, I never thought about it that way. But that is, I felt like I was on a wave that took me. That wasn't in my thought. It just happened. I mean, the other thing is that I'm very niche on my genre. Is very, you know, it's headshot photography. Like, you know, there were so many bad headshot photographers out there that I like kind of went in and I was like, oh, I felt like I could do it. I was like, I don't see any good stuff. It's not like, you know, I wanted to be a portrait photographer to the stars like Bruce was. And, you know, I was like, that's tough. That I don't know if I can do. But this headshot thing, these guys are terrible. Like I could do that. And now it's kind of like morphed into me doing a lot of celebrity work and stuff anyway, which has been great. But yeah, I didn't envision that part of it. But I tell you what, I can't tell you how many times I said to myself that I'm the best in the world at what I do, to myself, like without anybody saying it. And because if you say that to people, they just think you're nuts, you know, or arrogant. You know, but if you say it to yourself and believe it, you can't. Self-trust is so deep, you can't get around it. You can't lie to yourself. Like you might try, but you know deep internally that it's not true. Like I couldn't trick myself out of saying that. I was so hell-bent to be that and then luckily the chips fell in place to help me get there, which was not anything I did shooting. It had nothing to do with my photography. It had to do with there was a vehicle to get me there. It was all these teaching platforms that did it for me. It wasn't even my photography is great. I love my photography. I think people think I'm a great photographer. But without the photographers wanting to learn and me saying I'll teach, it would have never happened because I was in a studio, like hiding. I didn't want anybody to know what I was doing. I was like, I'm doing my thing. And then when I decided to let the world know what I was doing, that's when it happened. And that's when you get the people that support you get the haters, you get the whole thing. And I've been fortunate that in my genre, I was listening. I was always trying to decide how to talk about it without having people get offended, like how does he know that he's so good, or why does he think he's so good, or that kind of thing. But I was listening I'm a big New York Giants fan, football fan, American football.
Yeah, well, it's fun.
Yeah. And Lawrence Taylor is probably the best defensive player of all time. Like nobody even really comes close. I mean, there's a lot of good players, but LT was it. And he said, when they said, why do you think you're so great, or are you the greatest defensive player that ever played the game? And he said, if not me, who? And I was like, that's all. That's done. I'm done with that. That's good. I'm like, if not me, who? So that was it. That's when I realized I was like, okay, I don't have to say it to anybody. It's just, if not me, who?
I think there's another thing of having self-belief is great. Having evidence to back it up is greater. So there's a lot of people I work with where they don't necessarily have that inbuilt self-belief. While I believe, and I think there's so many components that actually stop that now, I actually try to place myself in what would a 15-year-old me do in 2024 now compared to me being 15 in 2005. Vastly different worlds, vastly different messages being sent to that young boy. How would I be? And I have no doubt that there would be a huge increase in self-doubt that would get in the way of that, just because of sheer comparison, just comparison of everyone going on, this person doing something great over here. And I think it's the number one roadblock I see of athletes I work with, anyone I work with, corporate, wherever, is I make a move and then that move wasn't as good as the person over there making some move and it being comparatively a smaller or less impressive move. Therefore, I don't even think about taking the next move because it's why do it, because they're now way ahead of me and it's comparative. So I think of all of that need to, it goes in with perfectionism. It goes in with it. If it's not a better move or a perfect move, like I can't take it, and it's hard, it's challenging. And having that self-belief now, I think, is harder. I think I just see it. I see it. It feels a much more challenging thing to do. So for me, it's right. Get evidence of something. Achieve some small little thing that you can go, I made X amount of effort and I got Z, Y outcome.
Yeah.
I'm going to go again and keep setting goals. And you spoke about you were setting those goals. You kind of just did it.
Yeah.
But I think more people actually need to just be handheld through that process just for a little bit to kind of fight off a lot of the comparative sort of messages that are going on in the world to combat this lack of self-belief that there is.
Yeah, I think that there's a little bit of nurture versus nature going on there too with people. I think it's like what we're being hit with. I don't know if people inherently nature-wise have stuff in them that just they're gonna be successful no matter what situation they're put in. There must be, but I don't know about that. But in terms of the nurture part of it, or your surroundings, obviously that's a big part of it. So for people to get out of, situations where, even like if you're on a bad team or something and it brings you down, when you're an individual that's playing really well or something in your sport and you're on a bad team and you don't see any way out of it, and you're not having the results because of the team, even though you could be a really great player, it could be a real problem.
It was a real interesting thing we've got going on in the UK. I'm a captain of my team on a Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing, it's the level below professional. I've dropped down after retiring from
How's
professional.
that feel?
It's completely different as to why I'm playing the game.
Yeah.
So I'm playing the game for enjoyment, for my friends. I use it as a social element, as well as I want to succeed. I want to still have the competitive spirit because it's still a fairly good level.
Yeah.
I actually feel worse when I go watch a professional match. So if I go watch a professional match with some of my old teammates that are still playing it, people I know that are playing it, that is a tougher experience because I'm I'm still 34. I'm like fairly fit.
Yeah.
I feel like I could just jump over the fence and be there. So that's a much tougher experience. I am hit with a massive reality check when my body goes, that will break you. So that's challenged. But what we've got on a Saturday is really interesting. Something we've never experienced before is our team. We've lost. We're 0-4. We've never experienced that. We're a very good team.
Yeah.
We've lost 4 in a row. And it's not the quality of the players. We've lost 5 players, which is a huge loss, to be fair. But it's not the quality we've got in the room is fine. But there is some definite signs that we've seen, and I hate doing the generational thing, but it is quite inherently true, that there is just a lack of want. And the message we have put across quite a lot of the time now is, I know you're not at the level that some of the senior guys in the team are at. That's okay. I don't expect you to come out and win us the game with skill, right? Because you're not there yet. But what I know is in your control is the character that you have, the way in which you present yourself, the effort that you're putting in out there, whether it's like diving for a ball, like are you the guy that's willing to scratch himself up to just get that ball and go for that next play?
Yeah.
And that characteristic being the thing that could get you the result, even though you may not see the result for the next few months. But I think if we do that collectively as a team, the guys that especially have got much more pressure to perform and actually get outcomes, becomes easier on them as well, because you go, okay, well, I've got these young guys that are still at least trying to go in the right way. But we're seeing it go the other way. There's such a lack of that, which on the flip side, you flip it again, is you say, well, the land grab, an opportunity to rise above everyone else and succeed and to be seen, is never been lower. It's such a great opportunity. And so why not just have that little bit of drive, a little bit of discipline, a little bit of whatever it is, show it, and then we just get around you. We just get around you and support you, and you will fly. If you don't show it, we don't know. And that's something that we're seeing that's really hard. And again, this is the UK culture. I don't know what it's like in the US, but I've spoken to schools here, and there's huge confidence lacks and huge anxiety rates. And I just think it's such a great opportunity for people to go, you're telling me I've only got to do a little bit more to just get there? Like, go for it. Like, go.
I think is a little difficult because a lot of kids aren't even getting into sports these days. They're just on their phones and doing things, and they're not active. So who knows what the future's going to hold in that department.
What does that even look like for someone getting into sailing? Like, does that have a...
Well, I mean, it's interesting to see the generations down where I'm from on the Jersey Shore, you know, when the kids come through and you plop them in sailboats and hopefully it sticks, and, you know, then they go up through the junior program, and when they get out, when I was like in my, you know, around 16, 17, 18, I continued on into the boat I still sail today. And a lot of them are just getting bored and not doing it and quitting, and then it just loses its oomph. So this amazing sport that's been around forever on the Jersey Shore is dwindling a little bit. I think they're trying to reinvigorate it with different kinds of sailboat classes and stuff where you could just throw somebody in a boat and stuff. But it's tough. You want to compete and you want to be competitive. You got to work hard at it. And some people are just like, go do something else, or sit on the beach, look at my phone.
Yeah, like honestly, I think it's just a global truth about sport. Yeah. One thing I'm interested with your work you do now is, do you get other people's, if someone's coming in for, say, a shoot, do you get other people's expectations of what that should look like before you've shot it? Does someone come in and go, you feel like there's an expectation of a level you need to be at, or is it majority of people coming in and they're just, you perform and you do what you do?
No, yeah, I don't. A lot of times I don't even have to know. I don't know the person. I mean, most of the time I don't know the person. The person walks in and I see him for the first time. I'm like, all right, let's go to work. It's very cool because it's very challenging, but I don't know what they're looking for per se, unless they give me a bunch of pictures and they're like, I wanted something like this. And then I could say, okay, I could try to do something like that. Usually the pictures they show me aren't that great anyway. So I'm like, I don't know how to do, you're trying to dumb me down right now. You know, I'm like, I don't know how I could do that. But my brain starts to go to work on what I think, you know, I've done it with you already. I'm looking at you right now. So my brain just goes, oh, he's a pretty good looking guy. I like the scruff and he's got that blue eyes. He's like, I would shoot him like this. I'd probably do this with him. You know, my brain just does that automatically with every human I see. I think the human face is the most interesting thing to look at. So I try to like get the best out of that person as the artist who I am and infuse my art into whatever they come in the door with. And usually it works out pretty well. It's worked out so well so far. But yeah, I don't do any preconceived stuff usually unless they ask. If there's a meeting beforehand, it's rare. But sometimes people want to do that, and I'm happy to discuss it. But sometimes it also feels like it's unless it's for a very specific reason, like they need a specific look for a website or something. I'll go into detail with that, but normally I'm just like, get in here. You've seen my website, you know my work. Let's fire you up.
How does it go with probably people's want to be perfect? There's social media driving, filtered the world we live. But how does that is the worst thing for you?
The worst thing is that so people's perception of their appearance to themselves and their perception of other people, how they see their appearance is so varied. It's so ridiculous. Like nobody can jump in somebody else's brain and see what they're thinking about their appearance, but they can conjure up all sorts of ideas of what other people are thinking about their appearance or what they think about their appearance. And that has led into people wanting to change their appearance. You know, I feel like we won the lottery being born and even being here, and most people that are genetically gifted don't see it. And it's so disturbing to me because I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's gorgeous, and they can't. All they want to do is look at the pictures and go, oh. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So that's the hard part of my job. So, and it's a tough hit on me because I'm very into seeing beauty and trying to capture beauty. When the person can't see it themselves, what am I gonna do? Like, what's my job? Like that, they can't see their beauty. Even if I have a beautiful picture staring them in their face, they can't see it anyway. It's like disheartening. Like it's horrible.
Is there any way in which you found to try and get them to accept it?
The only way to get somebody to get the edge off is to take pictures of them that they haven't seen, put them in another light. So when I exceed their expectation, number one is the bar goes up for them now. I don't know if it helps or hurts, but they'll get pickier about their own images that are the best images they've ever had. And then they'll get pickier about those, which I'm like, how are you being so picky now? So their bar went up. And then, they'll, a lot of times if people are very open with themselves and open with me, they'll be like, that's the best picture I've ever seen of myself. Or I never realized that I could look like that. It causes tears. It's very powerful, the appearance, how people come off as to other people, and what they're projecting to the world is their physical presence. So the first way people are recognized is for the way they look. And then people are afraid to get in front of cameras. So I'm like, you got to get in front of a camera. There's no documentation that you've been here. I mean, you need a picture of yourself. And then everybody's like, well, there's this AI thing. I'm like, yeah, that didn't record any history. That didn't get your age right. That didn't capture you on this day in this space doing this with that expression, with that reality. It's all strange, and it's all up in the air right now. And then you watch reality TV and you see what everybody's doing to themselves. And then there's these trends, and I have to watch the trends and then see what's happening and try to get around what people, I'm trying to talk them off the ledge. I'm like, look, it's way better than you think. Like that's, and I'll always tell them when they've got a feature that's phenomenal and really great. And if they have a feature that's, like for instance, a lot of people have an eye difference, like one eye is bigger than the other. And everybody thinks they have a lazy eye, but it's not a lazy eye. It's just that our eye sockets are different sizes. So when you look straight ahead and you take a picture, one eye is bigger than the other, and the people think something's wrong with them. And I was like, everybody has that. And it changes depending upon your expression. Like, that's normal. Like, if you feel your brow bone, you're human, you have a skull. Like, there's no way that your skull bones are exactly even, and the amount of skin between your eyelid and your eyebrow is exactly the same. And one's going to open a little bit more than the other. And there's all sorts of things you can do. But people don't see that. They just see that, oh my gosh, something's wrong with me. And I'm like, you got to get over that. For me, the biggest thing about that, and I'm trying to work on and change, is that I believe your relationship with your appearance is like a side door to your character, and people have never wrapped the two together. And I think your character takes a hit if you don't feel good about your appearance. And that's something I'd like to change.
Do you think, though, that willingness to change their appearance, people's willingness to change their external features, that whether it's through surgery, through that, because I've spoken to people, say, who have had it, and look, even with my condition, it's been an option thrown on the table, and I've always rejected it because, for better or worse, I don't know how, but I've got to this level of acceptance, and I see the kind of beauty in the idiosyncratic side of life, the imperfections. You got a scar, you got a story. You got this blemish, you got a story, right? But people set a preconceived expectation of what their image should look like.
Yeah.
And that I have heard people say, okay, well, if I'm to correct it, then that will bring me the happiness for my character to come out. And yeah, maybe it might bring some confidence, but I'm always sitting there going, but you kind of know. You kind of always know why you did it, right? You kind of know why it's there and what it's about. So yeah, but when you talk about that,
would it be different for you if it was on a part of your body that showed all the time that you couldn't cover to fix it?
So it's a good question. I've met people. So with my condition, for example, people can get affected hands. Mm-hmm. So they can have like limb differences. My hands are totally fine. So I've always said like I'm happy that I never had that. I actually think more from a practical point of view. I think the fact that I couldn't catch a ball, and that would have been really frustrating. But yeah, I think if it was like a real facial feature or maybe a limb, I don't know. Yeah, it's a good question. That's a really good question. Maybe one I haven't really given too much consideration for. But also, I think I've met so many people who have had that, and the way they've got, or where they've got to, is just pure acceptance of this is just the way it is. Like if I sit here trying to control something I can't control, I'm just going to suffer forever, constantly. You will forever suffer, and you do see people suffer just forever. And even I've met young men with BDD, with body dysmorphia disorder, right? And they can't stop adjusting the way they look. They can't stop checking, and I just think like how, for me, that would be so mentally draining, and it must be mentally draining. It has to be cognitively draining to go constantly adjusting and never being good enough and never being enough. And then God, where that leads into other parts of your life, your relationships, your work, your character. So I'm interested in you hearing more about what you mean about that, your image and your looks leading into your character.
Well, I think character is something that people really, it's like a trigger point for people. Like your character taking a hit on something, everybody wants to have a strong sense of character, people to see them as that, like your character, the fiber you're being, I guess I would say. And if I'm saying that, you know, having a strong sense of your, or a relationship with your appearance that you've come to grips with, that you acceptance, and the aging process, it changes over the course of people's lives too. I've never had a 10-year-old come in and say, Peter, you know, we'll do the shoot, but I wish I could have lost the 10 pounds first. You know, it just, at 10 years old, you don't know, nobody's saying any of that. So is this a learned response through adolescence that could be happening to people, that this could be a factor? I don't know. But I feel like it's so draining to me to having heard it over and over and over. You know, I don't know how many, you know, thousands of people I've photographed, but it's more prevalent than not. And it's tough. It's tough because I mean, we're human. What standard are you putting yourself up against? And, you know, personally, you know, because I talk about this and stuff, I feel genetically, look, my parents hooked me up. I feel like I got good looks and I was able to model, and it opened up these doors for me to take pictures and stuff like that. So I don't feel like an expert in talking about this because I don't have this problem, but I've been trying to work with people that I'm around. A good friend of mine's a photographer, and he during the pandemic, he posted a picture of himself in my photography group on Facebook. And I thought it was very courageous of him, because I was like, whoa. He was an electrician, and he was amateur photographer, but an electrician in the city of Chicago. And he went into a transformer to fix it, and it exploded. And it burned like more than 50% of his body. So his whole face is reconfigured, everything. And he posted a picture of himself in my group. And I just thought that was very, you know, powerful of him to do that. So I started working with him with some other groups of people that have some disfigurations and stuff like that. I don't know exactly what his name's Rod Flores, and I don't know what Rod and I have up our sleeves, but he's an amazing photographer. He's an amazing friend, and he's really feels like he needs to give back to something about what he's gone through and what he's living with. He hadn't left his house. He posted that thing on Facebook. His accident happened in 2017. In 2019 was the pandemic. I guess in the pandemic is when we met. I was doing a workshop in Ohio, and he was in Chicago, and I said, look, I really want you to come to my workshop. And he said, I've never been out of my house since this happened. I don't think I can go. I guess he'd been out, but he hadn't been he'd never traveled. And he didn't go out much. But I figured out a way to get him there, and he came to this workshop with me. And he's been coming to workshops with me. Every time I go to Chicago, I bring him to all my workshops. He's spoken, and I brought him to an event with me where I had him speak. And it's something that people just have to be aware of. I don't know how this is going to play out, or what my role is in this stuff, but I just get to the point where I'm like, if I can make people feel better about their appearance from having been in front of my camera, that became my purpose in life. So that's all I want. So if that person is really tough on themselves and I take a picture of them that they like, I did my job that day. That's it.
I always talk about how character leads to sometimes the outcome, or the mindset that you having the mindset first can really take you towards the outcome you want. Sometimes people go, I need to get the outcome, and then that'll make me have the mindset that I wish I had, or the character that I want. In this sense, I have always, well, I have seen actually, even in myself, my character, every time I've aimed at something, there's a characteristic and a trait, whether it's say what you're going to, if you say something, do it. Like that's a value of mine. If it's be brave, be courageous, the way you hold yourself, you get the experience, then you kind of get the receipt from that experience that kind of backs it up. And Amy Cuddy had it in her TED talk about body language, about how people, if they presented body language, then they sort of faked it till they became it, right? And there's so many good stories in that TED talk. But I've noticed even in myself, as I've changed and aimed at character, that people kind of perceive you differently. And I've worked with para-athletes, and I even worked with the England physical disability cricket team. These guys are missing limbs. These are guys that have had cancers, that have like chronic nerve damage for the rest of their life, and all sorts of different things that are going on for them, missing eyes, and they do really they face many different challenges. But one thing that they did leading up to a tournament was really went on character, like what it meant to play for England, what it meant for them. It was really about for them or their families, and it was a much more esoteric thing. It was a bigger, more less about me and we, and you saw them carry themselves differently. You saw them change.
Oh, wow.
And you just see their shoulders, their chests up, and the guys even were setting this small little rule about the guys who had prosthetic limbs, especially one leg. They would always wear long trousers to hide it. There was a rule that you had to wear, everyone wore shorts, and it was to own it, like to own your imperfection and to like run with it. And it changed their belief about themselves and their confidence. And so the way in which they showed themselves and presented themselves and how they looked, you would say that is a better version of them, just purely from, I'm going to be this type of character. I'm going to be someone who's brave. I own this situation. I own what I've got. And then what you see, what everyone else perceives, is different. And I've had that. I've got a beard now compared to when I didn't. But I have felt my character change at the start of this year, 2024. I was like, right, this is how I want to be. This is the type of person I want to be. And I've just found things attracted to me, like people going, you're carrying yourself differently. You look different. And I'm like, well, I'm aging, so I'm actually technically getting worse. Yeah. But I'm actually feeling different, and they're seeing that. Yeah. So I like that idea of, I think people hide their character because they want to show a different version of themselves. You can go into narcissism, you can go into people showing different sides of themselves. But I think aim for that character, and kind of the outcome, how you present it, just kind of take care of itself.
Yeah.
That for me is,
I like that,
where I sit with it.
Yeah, I like that. I don't think I would want to know the source of where this stuff comes from for people. You know, it could be Johnny in the 6th grade said you had a big nose or something. You know, that could have been it. That could have been the, you know, and I just feel that that's so tough. That's so tough. So if there's a way for me to rid the world of that, I'd be going for it. But I don't know. I'm just doing it one person at a time, best I can.
Where does building trust sit for you? Why is building trust so important to you?
I can't do my job without it. I think well, look, any rapport between human beings, we're all on this sphere roaming around another sphere that's hot, and we're like, you know, we're trying to make it and figure it out. So when you have interaction with human beings, I'm putting more at stake with each interaction I come involved with, each person that I get involved with. I found that that's kind of fruitful to see if you can make connections with people on a daily basis. And even in little, you know, like little moments, it doesn't have to be, I mean, for me, the trust thing was really about getting my job done. You know, the people would come in the door, and if they don't trust me, I'm not going to be able to persuade them to do the things I need them to do with their face. So it really is about persuasion. I can't jump into people's body and do it for them. They have to do it, you know, but I have to coach them. And if they don't trust me as a coach, they're not going to do what I say, and they're not going to be certain about what I'm telling them to do. So building trust in these very short snippets of time, because sometimes I have an extended period of time with people, and sometimes I have like 2 minutes, 30 seconds, like to get a shot. I had a situation where I had 30 seconds to get the shot, and it's like, you better get the job done.
Because you're making many people that sit in front of a camera, like, and having done podcasts, I know I've changed over the time I've been doing it. I get more comfortable in front of the camera as it goes on. But a lot of people I see, as soon as the camera's in front of them, it's a very uncomfortable experience. Whether they're talking, well, especially if they're talking, they've got to say something. But even so with photography, when you're building that trust, is there a certain method?
I have a camera around, I'll point it at you.
There's a few around.
Cameras around here.
But is there a certain thing that you kind of lean on, like a practical method that you go, this is a way that I know I can help build trust in this person, make them feel comfortable? And that's probably a communication thing as well, right? But
yeah, well, usually I would start with kind of reading where they're at when they walk in the door. You can get from a quick sense of somebody the second you walk in and meet them, whether they're going to be like where their brain's at. Like I remember I had this guy walk in the door, he had a handful of clothes, and he just ran in my door and saw the first chair and just threw it on the chair. And I was just like, this is going to be an interesting shoot. He didn't even say hi. He was just like, and he's like, oh, sorry, okay. And he was all frazzled. And I was like, but that's the way he operated. So I had to like coach him in a certain way like that. I've had other people that come in and they're like, hi, I'm here for a photo shoot. And I have to be like, hi, all right. I can't be like, hey, all right, get in here, let's go. I want to make them feel comfortable. You read people first and then figure out how to connect with them through different ways, and it's different with each person. My brain, for me, it's very intuitive. What do I need to say to this person to get them to do what I need them to do for me to perform my job well and for them to get the best picture of their lives? That's it. So what do I need to say? What do I need to do? And sometimes it's not right. I need to do things that are not right. Sometimes I need to confuse people. A lot of times I do use confusion, because what happens is I want subconsciously driven expressions. Expressions are beautiful when your subconscious makes them. Like your face knows how to look your most attractive self. Everybody looking in a camera is stifled because they're using their conscious brain to try to do something with their face. It doesn't make sense. You don't ever think about your face walking down the street. Like, let your face be, But when the microscope's on us, and which is the camera pointed at us, our muscles change. Like you said, when they walk with their chest puffed up and back and stuff, it's the same with the face. The face turns into it changes how attractive you are depending upon what your thoughts are. So I'm trying to get them to forget about the camera. That's the goal. So I utilize, something that's more important to people than their appearance. Do you know what's more important to people than their appearance? You don't know?
No.
What's more important to you than your appearance? Do you know? Nothing?
My character.
What's inside your character? Intelligence? Intelligence.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Intelligence is more important than appearance. So I found that if I go after their intelligence, then they will forget about the camera. So in a certain way. So people also not necessarily people pleasers, but if I'm their coach and they've hired me and I'm telling them to do something, they usually want to do it. So, for instance, if I have a camera pointed at you right now and I just said, do me a favor, right now, the way you're sitting right there, I need you to turn your hips toward Big Ben.
Big Ben?
Yeah.
Where's Big Ben?
I mean, it's in the UK. I don't know. Aren't you from there?
Which way is that right
what do
now?
You mean?
I don't even know which way we're going. Right?
Well, I'm sorry.
South, east, west.
Right. What's more important, your intelligence or your appearance right now?
My intelligence right now.
Exactly. So in that moment, I want you to be on that plane. I don't want you to be worried about your appearance. So I'm trying to infiltrate your thought process to stop it from worrying about the way you look, to go into something that's more important. Is that, what does he want me to do? And things of that nature.
And then kind of leading on from building trust with them, how do you build trust in yourself that you're making the right decision, or you're going on the right path? I'm kind of fascinated with this idea right now of trusting in your own decisions.
Yeah.
And having that trust in your own decisions. And I say this because I'm 34 years old, I'm single, and I'm trying to figure out what that next little phase of my life is going to be. And even on something like the dating scene, there is this pressure to...
That must be tough. Are you having fun?
I'm having fun, but there is a pressure around it to be like, whatever decision you make next, is that girl going to be the next, that's going to be the one, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that the one?
Oh, yeah.
And I try to relinquish that pressure from myself. I go, look, the more I think, the harder I think about that, harder I think about the decision, the more I won't make the right one, right, for me. So I'm constantly thinking about this. How do I trust myself with the right decision, the right path that I'm going on? And even in your story, you've had these different pivots, these movements, these different changes that are vastly different.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do you kind of trust yourself that you are making the right decision?
That's a really good one. Because I always felt like I was throwing a bone and then I would pick up the bone. Like, I'd be like, my life was never, I always was envious of those people who were like in high school and were like, I'm going to be a doctor now. And then they go and be a doctor, or I'm going to do this. And then they go and do that. I was never like that. I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow. And then something would show up and I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do this today. And then my life ended up here. So that's the way it worked. So I was like, well, it's been good so far. So I'm just going to go off intuition. So the vibe, the feeling, like, what feeling do I get? And then I started to realize that it was right, like, all the time, like not even part of the time. Like, I was like, this feeling about this situation was right, like, is right. So I think a lot of people don't allow their intuitive factor to kick in, and they just think it's too hocus pocusy or something like that. But the feeling you have around anything is determining a lot. I had a lot of times I'll get very, one of the times I get very amped up when I shoot celebrities and stuff like that. I love it. It's like I was like, this is so cool. That, and like, I got to shoot like the NFL. I was like running around like a kid in a candy store. I was like, this is so cool. But if I shoot like any political figure or a business mogul or a celebrity or an influencer, I'm like, let's go. I'm like, this is awesome. I get so crazy. So I found that I just I let it get to me so much. It's like it's like I start shaking and everything like that. And I was like, I got to figure this out. Why do I have to figure that? Why is that so like why does that amp me up so much? Like, what is it about that like, I don't know. But, so I was talking, a friend of mine is a medium, which I never knew that. I mean, I know they exist and stuff, but I was like, I'm not into that stuff or anything. But a friend of a friend needed some pictures. So I took some pictures of her, and then she's like, oh, I'll give you a reading. I was like, okay. And then we were talking, and I said to her, I said, how come when like I shoot these people, like sometimes I get like it goes from adrenaline, excitement to like nerves. And she's like, it's probably not you. Like, it might be them. Like, are you doing anything different when you're shooting these people than your craft? And I'm like, no. And she's like, well, they have to perform. Like, maybe they're nervous in front of your camera, and you're picking it up because intuitively you're very intuitive. You're probably picking that up. And I was like, you're right. And so now I think about that. I'm like, there's not that many times that I should get nervous about pointing a camera at somebody. I'm very good at it. I know what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything different. Like, I do the same thing over and over again. Then once you have a good recipe, why don't mess with? I mean, I tweak things and I get creative and I get artistic. But I was like, why should I feel this way? So I'm really working on trying to figure out where that energy is coming from and where to harness it and put it elsewhere. I'm like, this is not cool. And I found that there is a high percentage of times where it's really that person is so affected by the camera, and I'm letting that affect me. And she was like, you got to stop that. I was like, all right. She's like, just realize you're probably picking up their energy. I was like, is that true? And she's like, yeah. I was like, okay. So I'm working on it.
So that's something you're working on for yourself right now.
Yeah. You think that I've shot so many thousands of people. Like, why would I get nervous shooting anybody? Now, the other flip side of the coin is that I want the nerves there because then I feel like it means something to me.
Totally.
You know, when you go up to the plate, do you go up to a plate in cricket?
There's the plate's not there. It's like, oh God, how do we describe this one? I've had to do this for the last 48 hours, be describing cricket to Americans.
Yeah.
So basically you have, instead of having 4 bases, you have a wicket, and then there's a batter that's facing the bowler, and they just bowl at you. But there's a crease. It's called a crease.
That's where you hit.
That's where you stand to hit the ball.
To hit it.
Yeah.
All right. When you go up to the crease, is there always nerves or sometimes? Or
yeah.
not?
So I'm a bowler, pitcher in inverted commas, and for me, there's always something at the start of a game, and it depends, right? So if you see that what is happening to you when you're shooting, do you see it as debilitating for your performance? Like, do you see the shots are not as good? Like, is it just the experience is different and it's not as enjoyable?
No, I don't think there's anything wrong with it on my end of things, but my assistant's always like, you're shaking like a leaf. Like I was shooting, and I'm like, I just shake, but I've shaken all my life. I've had people tell me like, why are you shaking? Are you okay? Do you have like a problem? And I'm like, no, I've been like this since I was born. I like always.
To be fair, I have something similar
a lot too. What?
I have that similar when I have got something going on. I feel like I am like vibrating.
Yeah,
I genuinely got, and I have that, especially when I play. Like I feel like things become like they're already moving. Yeah, and that is true. It needs to be some level of excitement, right? This is what's called the Yerkes-Dodson law, which is where you need some level of arousal, stress, to get you some form of peak performance. But it's when, for a lot of people, where we find where performance drops off is they go too far. There's too much stress. It becomes unbearable. And it's bang, your performance drops off. But there's a sweet spot. There's an optimum zone for you to exist in.
What's it called?
It's called the Yerkes or Yerkes-Dodson law. So it's essentially a bell curve. So with stress and arousal on the bottom axis, and then performance on the vertical axis.
Interesting.
So the more stress, there's a certain sweet spot, and that shifts depending on personality, right? So you may be someone who is you have low levels of state anxiety, so you don't actually get that anxious very easy. So you might have to have quite a bit ramp you up to get you to that level. But you might be someone at state level, at sort of a trait level. So someone who is just a general nervous and anxious person at trait. You could be really highly strung, and then bang, suddenly a bit of anxiety happens and it spikes it really quick. So it might happen really quickly for them. And it's just knowing where you're at. So for a performer, for an athlete, it's really important that you understand how much anxiety is going to get me to a good place that makes me aware of threats and options and opportunities that I can take on, and then how much is going to get to me into a stage where that starts to become really debilitating and I start to overthink, because too little is boredom. Like if there's nothing going on, there's no stress. It's like, well, I'm late, and you could miss performance because you're not aware of things. You just, like, if someone's taking it too easy, you see this a lot in penalty shootouts in our football. Like if you see someone just like waddle up and they're trying to like really relax themselves, and you go, this guy's too relaxed,
really,
and then bang, ball goes over the crossbar, misses, or doesn't hit it as hard, keeper saves it, right, and they miss it. But the guys that are kind of looked amped up, they're focused, they're on it, and then they go up and strike the ball, they execute their skill. But then again, you go too far, the guys that are looking everywhere, constantly cautious, bang, they'll probably miss as well.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a level of how much that can affect you.
Yeah. Wow.
Peter, look, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for setting this up, for putting us here in this amazing studio.
It's good to have you in New York.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Honestly, I came to New York about 10 years ago, and I've always been like, that's too much. I'm a countryside boy, like it's too much. But I've come here and obviously something changed in me, and I'm like, I need to come back. Yeah. I need to come back. I need to be back. Again, it's just that vibe that I've had, the positivity that just comes off people, and sort of the opportunity that you see is different. But what's coming up for you? Is there anything exciting coming up for you that is on the horizon?
I'm just going to the European Championships in Vila Moura, Portugal in October. So I'm going to start training for that. I have a race this weekend, and then I'm starting to work out a lot more and see if I can get back in shape. And then we just got summer here in the U.S., which is always awesome.
Like, brilliant. Yeah. Where's the best place to send people to follow what you do?
Probably Instagram, Peter_Hurley on Instagram is a lot of my nonsense, and PeterHurley.com is my website if people want to get any see my pictures, and if they're a photographer out there that's interested in getting better at headshots, headshotcrew.com.
Awesome. We'll send it that. Yeah. Thank you once again for this. This has been been great to have you.
Yeah, been good to be on. Great talk.
If you've enjoyed this episode, then we've created a playlist of some of the best episodes to start with. All you got to do, head right here. Go on. Go.